Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Haunted Vermont podcast. Holy crap, it's been a while. So, anyway, my name is Paul, and as always, you are always listening to my voice. I don't know where I'm trying to go with this, but I guess I'm trying to say it in a weird way, because I guess it's been a while. Anyway, so tonight, we're going to have special guest Jason Engel with us. And Jason is a member of the Pine family, which we currently met. So if you heard the previous episode of Wilson Castle, we kind of got to hear our stories of what we experienced that night at Wilson Castle. Anyway, before I blabber on anymore, let's get Jason aboard. So Jason, welcome back, and thank you for joining, and hope everything is well with you.
Hey, Paul. Yeah, thanks for having me back. I appreciate it. Yeah, doing well. Hope you're well as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's
lots
life.
Of wells in there.
Life. Yeah, I mean, it's life. We always got to have some sort of well. Maybe at this point, we just need to make a well, and we can all have the water in the wells, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
All right. That's all.
We'll get some paranormal activity. Wells are actually a pretty good source, I will tell you.
It really is.
Yeah.
I forget, or I'm not really familiar with why, but maybe you could answer that at some point. But yeah, I have heard that wells are very interesting. I don't know if I want to say trigger object, but anyway, you can go into that more. But anyway, before we do talk about wells, Jason, for those that may not know you, how would you describe yourself?
Well, that's a good question. There's a well again. So I would describe myself as, paranormal investigator. I've been with PINE since 2008. I ended up leaving the group. I think it was in 2011 or 2012 because I ended up leaving Vermont and moving back down to New Hampshire, which I lived up in Vermont starting in 2006 for about 6 years or so. So I got into the group around 2008, but it was actually due to events before that, and also kind of throughout my life, as to what kind of pushed me into investigating. I also do a lot with spirituality, things like that. I practice Zen Buddhism, but I've studied all different types of spiritual paths and religions and things like that all through my life as well too. And I always wondered how it all connected and things like that. So yeah, I'm very into both subjects. It's all interconnected. I feel so. So I study it all as much as I can. But yeah, I would say that's kind of me in a nutshell.
Perfect, man. Yeah. I guess it's it's one of those fascinations where I mean, I don't know about you, but when I was little, I didn't really quite necessarily believe in that stuff at first, but then when you start having your own stuff going on and you don't know what's really going on at the time because I was little and didn't really understand what was going on, but when you have a friend's house that to this day I felt like it was the golden house of paranormal activity, because I remember when I had him on and we were talking about the old stuff that happened when I was there, when I wasn't there. We kind of wish we could take a time traveling machine and go back and be yo, you need to ask your mom for a camera so you can record this. This is golden paranormal stuff that everybody wants to capture.
I hear you. No, I've had quite a few experiences that I wish I had captured as well too. Probably one of my earliest was I was probably in second or third grade, but it was Christmas Eve, and I woke up to a UFO at my window. It was a little ball of light, like an orb of light, and I remember it because I remember thinking it's Santa Claus. I'm not going to get my presents. I'm awake. Oh my God, you know what I mean? So I remember rolling over and trying to go back to sleep. And I remember kind of looking back to see if Santa was still there, and the ball of light was still at my window, and then it silently started going up towards the sky. And I thought I remembered seeing some other lights up in the sky too, but I was a kid, you know what I mean? I didn't know what was going on. I just tried to get back to sleep and fell back asleep. And years later, before that, so I woke up in the morning. Luckily, my presents were there. And I went to my mother and I told her I saw Santa, and I got the yeah, and so years later, I went back to my mom and I was like, hey, listen, remember when I told you I saw Santa Claus? And I actually told her what happened. I was like, hey, listen, I really saw something. There was this ball of light, this white ball of light, and her face went like kind of white. And I was like, what's going on? And she's like, well, she turns out she had kept in touch with a friend of hers in the same neighborhood years after we left. And on multiple occasions, this woman, she'd wake up at night and get like a drink of water, things like that. She'd be at her, kitchen sink and looking out the window, and she'd see white balls of light going up to people's windows, going around power lines. So this was in Hamden, Connecticut. That's where I grew up as a kid. But and I was born in the Hudson, Troy in the Hudson Valley. I was born in Detroit, New York. So I guess I was kind of born into a paranormal area. So maybe I was born into it. I don't know, but so yeah. So that was my first experience. That stuck with me my whole life. And anyway, I'd always been fascinated by it. I was, I watched the X-Files as a kid. My nickname was Mulder, from some of my high school friends and things like that. Always studied it, always into it. Never really knew how to investigate, things. I didn't even really know that was a thing when I was a kid, I guess. I don't know. I just, other than Mulder, I thought FBI agents maybe did it, but, so I would just read, I would just read all the books I could get my hands on and all that type of stuff. But, anyway, through the years I had, kind of studied some, spirituality, things like that, and was trying to figure out how everything connected. And then finally, as I was studying the paranormal, we actually got a chance. So I was with a buddy of mine. His name's Dan. And we got a chance to go and investigate with somebody who lived in his building. And so this was in Manchester, New Hampshire. This is probably back in, 2002, maybe 2001. Probably 2002. But anyway, so we're in Manchester, and we ended up going to this place called the Devil's Church. It was this little tiny chapel that was up behind, I believe it's Granite Street Extension, something like that. I don't even think it exists anymore. I think they probably tore it down to build neighborhoods and stuff like that. But so anyway, it was this little chapel. It was abandoned, full of graffiti, full of leaves, the windows busted out, that type of thing. But this little stone chapel. And I remember we were sitting in there. We had an infrared camera. And that was all we pretty much had. There was a group of about 4 or 5 of us, this guy's buddies and me and my friend Dan. And we were asking questions. And as this guy was panning the camera, we actually caught a partial apparition. We actually caught half a body. So it was an arm, a leg, but there was no head, but you could see half a body just walk by in between the 2 people standing there. And I was hooked. That was it. I was in. Basically from there, I knew I was this is real. Holy crap. And so I started trying to learn all I could about, how to investigate, different techniques and EVP, how to record EVPs and things like that. And me and my friend Dan would actually experiment. And, we actually caught EVPs. We caught one of him. It sounded almost like his wife calling his name, which was odd. She was sleeping in the next room. Yeah, strange stuff, man. We had another experience where I saw the Hat Man. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Hat Man.
Yep.
Yeah. So me and my buddy Dan were sitting on his couch, and how the room was configured. So if you were sitting on his couch, directly ahead was a wall, and there was a door, and to the left was a window into a back courtyard type area, and it was a big apartment building. But he had curtains. The curtains were drawn. You couldn't see out. And right across the wall, directly in front of us, we were both looking right at it, and because we were just talking, just chilling, hanging out. And this shadow figure of the Hat Man, it looked like a guy in an Abe Lincoln hat, it was a really, really tall top hat. This shadow just walks across the wall, right in front of us. It just clear as day. And I remember him and I looking at each other what the hell? And getting up and trying to figure out, did somebody just go by the window? And we were trying to debunk it, but there was no way to debunk that, man. There was absolutely no way. There was also
there wasn't any sort of light in, or I don't know, with you were saying there was curtains, so it's not if there was a moon, it's not the moon could would
Could
go
have come
on
in.
and stuff.
Yeah, there was just no way. There was absolutely no way. And this shadow was defined too. It was like, you know how sometimes shadows can be kind of fuzzy. This thing was clear line defined, like, but it was 2-dimensional. Yet it like walked across the. It was just weird. It was really, really weird. But it walked across the wall and then like disappeared. But there was some other stuff that happened in that place too. Although I think part of it, you know, because we were so into the paranormal and we were like opening doorways, I think we were like drawing stuff there. But so anyway, he moved out of there. I ended up the biggest experience that I've ever had, which actually concurrently led me to Zen Buddhism, believe it or not, was actually another paranormal experience that I had at Kimball Pond in Dunbarton, New Hampshire, again with my friend Dan. We had just hiked around the pond. This was probably in 2003, and you know we had all this paranormal stuff happening, and we had all this crazy stuff going on. And I'm trying to figure it all out. And I'm studying spirituality at the time, like shamanism and all different stuff. And I remember we got done the hike. We decided to stick around. It was like dusk. And we were like, you know what, let's just hang out. We'll check out the stars for a little bit and just, relax. And I think at the time I was a smoker, so we were both smoking cigarettes and just hanging out. And so we're talking about the paranormal. And we were talking about spirituality, and then I was like, yeah, man, I just wish I figured out how it all interconnected. Like, I just don't understand. I just want to know the truth. And I screamed it. Like, I was like, I just want to know the truth, And as soon as I did that, a beam of light came down onto me and my friend from the sky. And it was the whitest, purest light you could imagine. Like, if you could imagine it, it was even purer than that. It was this, and it was a shaft of light. So what I mean by that, it was literally like a shaft of white, pure light coming down on me and my friend, and it illuminated nothing else. Like, so there was no, like, usually light will like kind of bleed out and illuminate trees and things. It didn't do that. This was literally a shaft of light. And we both did the whoa, and we looked up, and I remember the source of it being, it looked like it was way, way high up in the air, way up in like almost in orbit. And immediately I went into investigator mode. I was like, okay, are we missing time? What time is it? I got to check the clock. I got to, you know what I mean? So I went into like right into it. I'm excited. Like, I'm like, wow, something's happening. Holy crap, I'm losing my mind, right? And I'm not noticing that Dan is like practically crapping his pants. He's freaking out, like losing it, right? And so the light shuts off suddenly, right? And I'm like, dude, we got to find a clock. So I get into the car. I look, no missing time. I don't think we were missing any time. And I'm like, man, that was crazy. And he's like, dude, we got to go. We got to get out of here. And I'm like, no. We got to stay, man. We got to stay. And all of a sudden it dawns on me, like, it's completely quiet. Like, there's no sound whatsoever happening around us. Like, we're out in the middle of the woods. There's no crickets. There's no frogs. There's nothing. So as soon as it dawned on me that there's no sound, all of a sudden everything erupted. Like, it went nuts. All the crickets, all the animals howling, coyotes howling, whatever else was out there making noise. It sounded like it went around the entire pond. Went crazy. So
it's almost like somebody took the switch and turned it on instead of
turning
it on off.
And turned it to 11. You know what I mean? Like, not just 10. This one went to 11. Like, it was like, what is going on? My buddy was in the car before I knew it. Dude, get in the car. Where go? Like, he's losing his mind, right? So I'm like, okay, I got to get him out of here. So I wanted to stay because I'm nuts. But I got in the car. I'm like, all right, let's get out of here. So we get going. And I will say, so one thing I'm going to point out here. So a lot of people worry, and this is one thing I want to shoot out there to people, because you see a lot of these shows about UFOs and stuff like that, and they like to paint it as like this big, big, scary thing. Oh, they're here to get us. They're here to... First of all, if that was going to happen, probably would have already happened by now. Pretty sure they could do it at any time if they really wanted to.
They could. If you hear the stories from pilots and stuff who have shot at them and stuff. Yeah. And I mean, think... But what makes no sense too, I don't want to cut off your stories here, but like what fascinates me too is when you hear these stories of pilots that have shot at them and it doesn't do anything, but then you hear the ones where like the UFOs did get hit or by something. I'll just say by something because we don't really know per se.
Yeah.
But they crash. Like look at Roswell. Everybody knows Roswell. So I mean, so how come at one point if we're shooting at them, it doesn't seem to do anything, any sort of damage or whatever. But then there's times where they do crash.
Well, part of that I think too is I think some of what we're experiencing here is interdimensional. As a possibility, and to later get into it, but it's also interconnected with other aspects of the paranormal as well too. I think personally, we're dealing with interdimensional entities. I think there is a possibility that they can shapeshift. They can maybe appear as different things when their laws may not necessarily apply to us in their dimension. You know what I mean? They might have different.
When you mean shapeshift, sorry, but just kind of brings up an interesting thing that I've recently heard. So when you mean shapeshift, you mean like they can change their ship to look like something else?
Yeah. Well, essentially that, or their bodies, or like their physical selves. And the reason, I know it sounds crazy, but the reason why I say that, so when we see all these pictures, all these UFOs, right? Okay, it's always different, right?
Well, right.
Like,
we have
we
different
see some similarities.
Yeah.
You'll see like different types of like flying saucer types or different type of plasma types or things like that. But there always seems to be a different twist with each sighting. There always seems like the ship is slightly different, or things like that. Or if you look back at history, so back in the 1800s, UFOs were reported as airships. So almost like the steampunk type stuff. You know what I mean? So back then they would report these airships. But really to the point, there was a story in Germany where there was an airship that threw an anchor down that got caught in the door of a church, right? And this being came climbing down the anchor, almost looking like he was holding his breath, and to cut the rope of the anchor because the ship was stuck. And these people tried to grab this being, and the leader of the town or whatever, they were holding him or something like that. I think they were told to like let the being go or something like that, and the being climbed back up the rope and went back to the ship. Whatever, the ship left, and they took this anchor and they turned it into the door of the church. Like they made a door out of this anchor, supposedly. Anyway, you hear all these types of stories about these airships back in the day, and then as our technology gets better and better, the UFOs that we see always seem to be a little bit ahead. You know what I mean? So we had the airships. Then all of a sudden we started getting into like a little bit of the airplane technology. Suddenly we started seeing weird airplanes in the sky. Then next thing you know, we start developing jet technology. Well, now we're seeing flying saucers. Now there's even speculation, we have our own flying saucers from back engineered technology. Now suddenly we're seeing strange stuff like plasma craft and almost like with flying entities. We're seeing, possibly ships that might be alive and things like that. It always seems to change. It always seems to morph and change. There's also another author, Jacques Vallée. He's very well known. He wrote a book called Dimensions, and in that book he actually did a little bit of a study on the correlation of old stories of fairy abductions and stories of like fairy encounters and things like that, and how very similar they are to UFO encounters. And one of the things that the fairies used to claim to people that would encounter them was that we can make the old young, we can make the young old, we can make the small big, we can make the big small, we can appear as we want. So supposedly these beings can manifest themselves in whatever appearance that they want to be. And now his question was, so UFO sightings, religious apparitions, all these types of weird types of things that we see, how do we know that we're not dealing with the same, like either one entity that's projecting itself into our reality and manifesting itself in different ways, or different types of entities, or different entities, all, different types like human beings or whatever, but have the capability to shapeshift and literally are steering the course of human history. You know what I mean? He brings up, like, for instance, Emperor Constantine. He saw the apparition of a fiery cross in the sky, and he was the first Roman emperor to convert to Christianity, right? What if he hadn't seen that fiery cross in the sky? Was that a UFO? What was that? You know what I mean? Some people would say it was God. You know what I mean? Some people would say it was a UFO. Some people. That's the thing. Is so. I personally think that it gets a little bit weirder than what we think on the physical level. You know, to me, I've had so many experiences myself. It's not even a question. It's more of a matter of what is it, like what's the origin, what's the intentions, you know, things like that. So, but anyway, so going back to my beam of light. So the beam of light shut off. We got in the car, and my point being was that these beings. I think that beings out there, just like human beings, it covers the whole spectrum of ethics. Okay, and what I mean by that is you're going to have the real bad, you're going to have the real good, and all the gray in between. So, is there a negative aspect to the ET phenomenon or ultra-terrestrial phenomenon, if you believe in the multidimensional theory? There's going to be good and bad and everywhere in between there too. So, there are some bad ones out there, sure, but there are good ones too. And my point being is that these beings could have taken me and my friend. They could have taken us. I mean, you know, if you think about the technology and how advanced they are, they could have taken us at any point and they didn't. You know what I mean? They stopped because they knew my friend was afraid. You know what I mean? That's what I think. But so anyway, we get in the car, we leave, and about halfway home he goes, "Yeah, we should have stayed."
It's funny how the whole fight or flight kicked in.
Oh yeah, no, it was unbelievable. And I've been there. I have another story about that where I flew, but anyway, so I don't know if you've heard the term synchronicity, but I had this kind of synchronous event that happened a little bit later after that. So a couple months goes by, you know, we're still reeling from the beam of light, and I'm trying to figure stuff out. And I used to listen to this show called Coast to Coast AM. It's an AM radio show that covers the paranormal. That goes like late into the early wee hours of the morning. So that night I decided, I think I had the next day off, and I was like, you know what, I wonder who's on the show. Light coming out of the sky greets me. And I'm like, whoa, right? So I listen to the show, and I hear the show about this guy that lives out in a ranch in Washington State. He has UFO encounters all the time. I listened to his show. I ended up emailing the guy, bought his books, and ended up reading them and things like that. And in the books, there was this meditation, right, on how to. He was a contactee. He claimed to be able to connect with what he called universal minds or universal consciousness, and then in conjunction with that, with extraterrestrials, because you become one with everything, right? So I tried this meditation, but I altered it. I kind of changed it a little bit to suit myself a little bit, and in essence, I kind of like. It wasn't Zen, but it was Zen-ish, I guess is the best way I can put it. But basically, I tried to bring my awareness further back into myself, essentially, beyond the physical body. So I ended up having a crazy meditation experience that I can't really describe other than the fact that it felt like becoming literally one with everything, all time, space, everything. So had that experience, that flash, got out of it, was like, what on earth? Like, whoa. And then spent the next few years after that trying to figure out what the heck that was. You know what I mean? So I was reading all sorts of spiritual paths, spiritual books, all that stuff, and I ended up getting promoted at my job at the time, and that's how I moved to Vermont. Anyway, so make a long story short, or not so short. So I get to Vermont, and I move into a place in Milton, Vermont.
Okay.
And which is about 30 minutes north of Burlington, roughly, or 20 minutes or so. And so we move into this place. I was married at the time. We had just had a new baby. I also had a young son, older son. And so we move into this place in Milton. It's this duplex, and we're excited. We had lived in an apartment beforehand. Now we're in like kind of more of a country setting. We're excited. And it didn't take long, man. And this place there was something in there that was not pleasant at all.
You mean the apartment or house itself? You mean
the duplex that we lived in? Okay. Yeah. It was, so the first thing that we noticed, it sounded like there was like somebody that had broken into the house or something. Like we were hearing footsteps. So how it was, our bedroom was below, living room and everything was up top.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was a split level, type of thing. So,
Huh.
so our bedroom was below. So so we're sitting there sleeping one night, and my wife at the time wakes me up, and she's like, "Hey, I'm hearing footsteps. Somebody's in the house." You know what I mean? So I had a Louisville Slugger. I grabbed it. I go upstairs, and I'm walking around, trying to figure out. Nobody's there. So I go back to bed. And I'm like, yeah, I must have been hearing pipes or something. I mean, there's nobody in there. So we go back to bed. So next night, same thing. So I get up. I walk around. Nobody there, right? What's going on, right? So now I'm starting to be like, okay, go back to bed. Well, the next night, it wasn't the same thing, but something else happened. So we're laying there, and good night. We say good night. We're going to bed, and right about the point where you're just about to fall asleep, you're right in that in between stage. Boom! Right, something stomps on the floor right above us, wakes us both up, and we're like, "What the heck?" I go out, I jump up, grab my dad, I go upstairs. Nobody's in the house. Okay, and I'm not even kidding you. So we lived there for about just under 2 years. It was about like a year and 3/4 of a year, roughly. And every single night, this thing would stomp on the floor right about the point where you were about to fall asleep and would wake you up. Just the once. But it would do it every night. Okay? The one night it couldn't do it, my wife decided to stay up. And I went downstairs and went to bed early. I was beat. I think I'd worked like a double shift at work, whatever. So I was beat. And I went into the room. And I remember I kind of laughed at it. And I was like, haha. I was like, you can't stomp on the floor tonight. I'm going to bed. So I get in bed, laying there, and I'm sitting there thinking like, yeah, you can't do anything. And I'm, being all smug about it, right? And I'm laying there, and I start to fall asleep, and boom, my bed's shaking. It kicked the bed like pretty hard, man. It was like this thing had some energy. Bed was shaking, and so I was pissed. I stood up, and I was like, "Get the bleep out of my house!" I'm going off. I'm trying to stand my ground, and so I came out of the bedroom, and what my wife at the time, what's going on? What's going on? So I tell her what's going on. So, but yeah, man, this thing had some energy. It actually, at one point, there was an old dehumidifier. The pan had cracked and was broken, so I had it unplugged. Not most CDs, so I unplug it and I turn it all the way off, right? And when it did work, it was so old, we had to turn it all the way on for it to even do anything. So,
wow.
So it's unplugged, turned all the way down. We're sitting there watching a movie one night, and I hear something kick on. I'm like, what the heck? And this thing had picked up the plug, plugged it in, and turned it on halfway, which I never did. And my kids were dead asleep. My youngest was in a crib. He wasn't going anywhere. And my oldest, he slept. He was a lock. He did not wake up. Both my kids were dead asleep. It was crazy. Like, this thing had some energy. So we decided, that was pretty much when we were like, you know what? We need to get out of here. Like, we need to get out of this place. And it had gotten to a point, too, it was affecting my wife at the time really badly. Like, it was getting to her mentally. Like, it was starting to I'm pretty sure this might have been a demonic type of a thing or something of that sort, some type of negative entity. But it was basically starting to attach to her and starting to break her down to the point where she was getting depressed. She was changing. You know what I mean? I could see the change. So time to get out. So we had to wait till the lease was up. We started looking for new places, found a new place. So there was an overlap of about a month. So the place that we had found was in Winooski, just north of Burlington. And the bathroom was being renovated at the time. So they weren't quite ready for us to move in. So, but he was allowing us to like move our stuff there. So we were like slowly moving things there. And the last night we were in the Milton place, we decided it was late. We were like cleaning and stuff, and it got real late. We were like, you know what? There's no shower ready at the other place. Let's just camp out here. That way we can shower in the morning. We can get going. So we camp out in the living room. Everything's fine. No stomps. Actually, there was absolutely no stomp on the floor. We wake up. Okay, it's time to kind of get ready and get going. So we get up, and we had slept on a blanket on the floor, so I start folding up the blanket, and all of a sudden I feel like this burning sensation. I'm like, what the? like, what is going on? And it's like on the side of my back. It's like over here, like it's like in a really awkward spot, right? And I'm like, what is that? I'm like,
Basically, like if you have an itch, like us humans can't reach it, right? Like that area.
Yeah, it was kind of like in that spot, and I'm like, what is going on? And I'm sitting here thinking, like, maybe I rug burned myself, like in my sleep or something, like moving around, or like I'm like, what is it? And I'm like, hey, hon, can you check this out? And I pull up my shirt, and she's like, holy crap! And I'm like, what? She's like, you have 3 scratches down your back. So I had 3 scratches, which of course is not a good sign. So I had 3 scratches down my back out of nowhere, and she literally watched them like form on my back.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. So that was our last night, and I got the message loud and clear. We got out of there. We left and never looked back. Luckily for us, it never followed. But we had other stuff happen there too, weird stuff. So there'd be like flashes of light in the sky, almost like it looked like camera flashes. That would happen. And we had just all sorts of weird stuff, man. I'd have pictures of like I'd see random flashes of light in the house and things like that. It was an odd place, and it was set up. It was right across the street from a river, from the Lamoille River. Right down the road was a hydroelectric station, literally right down the street. And I mean, basically, I was set up to have paranormal activity. I mean, like all these things kind of lend a hand to it. So, especially near water seems to be a big thing. So, anyway, that experience is what made me decide, you know what, I want to help people with paranormal experiences and things like that, to help to either better understand it or to help them with, like, maybe if they are experiencing bad things like that, even if I can't get rid of it, at least be there for them, or help them to cope with it and best I can. You know what I mean? That type of a thing. So that's what actually pushed me into it. And I, of course, I had watched all the shows and I was into it all, and I've been reading about it and stuff for years. And I finally decided, you know what, I want to go for it. And so I think I did like a Google search for paranormal groups in Vermont, and that's when the INE popped up, and that's how I met Jeff. And yeah, the rest is history. I did the interview with him, got into the group. Betty, the current director, actually, now she actually joined at the same time as I did. We actually went to the same first meeting with Jeff and everything. So, but yeah, the rest is history. So Jeff kind of took a step back, I think a few years after, a little bit. Betty kind of took a little bit more of the director role. And I think Jeff was still involved for years, but I ended up leaving, like I said, kind of later on. So I didn't really get to, kind of get with the rest of the group, probably about like 2011, I think, is when I left the group, somewhere around there. But yeah, so then Betty, and I've kept in touch with Betty over the years. And then I think it was 2 years ago now, actually 2 years ago this month, pretty much, we were talking about something paranormal, and she was like, why aren't you doing this? Because I hadn't really like officially investigated. I've been doing my own research, and she's like, why aren't you doing this again? Like, she's like, what's going on? I was like, I don't know. I was like, yeah, maybe I should, so that's when we decided to try something new. Years ago, when we were in the group, we actually tried to have state chapters and like state divisions, essentially. So, and we had tried a mass division, and we had done it was actually a Maine one that we were working on as well. It had all kind of fallen through, at the time, but she was like, you know what, why don't we try to do that again? How would you feel about doing a New Hampshire division? So I was like, all right, let's give it a go. So I started the New Hampshire division of the group. And then shortly after that, we also decided to open it up a Mass one as well, too. So now we have a New Hampshire team and a Mass team. For a little while, I directed both, but that was absolutely crazy. So so we decided, and to have 2 directors in a group, what ship has 2 captains? None. So Betty is the director overall of the organization and of our Vermont team, which is also a TAPS family member. We're connected to the TAPS family as well. But I run the New Hampshire group, and then one of our members, Elaine Burgess, she runs our Mass team. We're both assistant directors for those states. So, but it's really helped us a lot. We can respond to cases really quickly. We can cover most of New England, and actually extending a little bit outwards also too, like in New York, we've gone down to Gettysburg. gone into Maine. So yeah, there's a lot of good benefits to having multiple teams. That's for sure. But yeah, so it's great to be back, and we've had some crazy experiences so far in the last 2 years. Yeah, I can't even get into it all. But I didn't need another 2 hours. But yeah. So that's kind of my story, and that's how I got into it. And, I've had some other crazy stuff happen too. With once I got into the group, I had an experience with a haunted case with Bigfoot evidence appearing at the same case. That's why I mean the paranormal tends to hang out with itself. So it's interesting. But yeah.
Perfect, man. Well, I mean, yeah, it's insane with like some of the stuff of what it can throw at you per se. Like when you were talking about some of your experiences, I was just like, yeah, I remember when I may have saw a UFO, or maybe it was like a drone that had a really big extended life on its battery. But I saw that on Route 22A here in Vermont. So I don't know if you're familiar with that area, but
Yeah.
but yeah, it was. I have a whole episode based on my experience on that. But to cut it short, is that this thing was stationary in the air for more than 2 hours, and I did my research of like, well, back in the day, which was I think I said it's got to be somewhere maybe around 2008, 2009. I think is what I said. I said, but I mean, we went to lunch and came back, and this thing was still in the air. It was like a black dot. It didn't seem like, like with drones, if you stare at it long enough, you can almost see like the propellers. Like I couldn't see anything of that. There was no sound. It was just literally just there in the sky, like a clear blue sky, no clouds in the sky at all either. It was a very nice day. But the one thing that took away from this this event, I'm just gonna say, is when I told my partner, when we get a chance, if it's still in the sky, I'm gonna point to you where, because he couldn't see it in the sky for some weird reason. He couldn't see where it was, and so we finally got a break. And as soon as he got to me, I was like, okay, it's still there. And as soon as I went to point at it, that's when it took off.
Of course. Of course. I swear they know, man. It's unbelievable. Like, I've actually had... So there was a time with my buddy Dan again. I don't know what it is with us, too, but... So we had... Ironically enough, we had just finished watching... I don't know if you've seen them, the videos of Dan Aykroyd talking about UFOs and all that stuff.
I have not.
If you like Dan Aykroyd, it's a great... Like, it's on YouTube. Just look up Dan Aykroyd UFOs and it'll pop up. But he goes on a little while about UFOs and his experiences and things like that. So we finished watching that, and we decided to go have a cigarette. And which I think I've quit smoking by now. As of
me
now,
too.
7 years ago, 8 years ago, but
12 years for me.
Oh, nice! Congratulations, man. That's awesome. So anyway, yeah, we were going to smoke a cigarette. And I remember walking out onto his porch, and I just got this weird feeling. Like, I just knew. And I looked up at the sky, and I looked directly at whatever this thing was. And at first, I thought it looked like two birds flying like wing to wing, almost. And then I realized that the wings weren't flapping, right? And then I realized that what I thought was birds was actually two lights, like almost like crosses. But they almost were shaped to kind of look like birds. It was weird, man. And you could see from the light that there was a little bit of like structure behind, like there was a ship, but they were trying to keep the light very low. Something just happened?
No, my cat.
Okay.
Yes. My cat is like staring at my white thing. Like, I have one of those lights where you gotta pull on the string.
Oh,
so
yeah.
He is just staring at it because he wants to attack it. So
wants the string.
Yeah.
But sorry, what was there for that? That's
Basically, the light was like it almost like it was trying to act like a bird, but it wasn't. And then,
right. Sorry, yeah. So we had the lights were trying to act like a bird. Behind it was like you could see like a structure, like there was actually like a ship or something, more structure to it, but you couldn't really make it out. And again, it was around like dusk time. The light was starting to go down a little bit, but there was still light in the sky. Which
so
is another time,
like dusk air, dusk.
dusky. Yeah, it was, and that's a lot of the times when a lot of paranormal stuff will happen because for some reason the paranormal loves liminal things, and what I mean by that is like this liminal meaning the space in between, or the spaces in between crossroads, power line type sections, the time in between dawn and dusk, and things like that. So they like liminal times for some reason. I don't
Same
know
with
why.
like 3 a.m. the witching hour.
Exactly. You know what I mean? So kind of, it's like the in between time of night into day. You know what I mean? That type of thing. So, man, I lost my place again. Yeah. So anyway, I'm looking.
It had a ship behind it. Basically, is where you were at.
And you see the structure, and I'm staring. I'm pointing right at it. I'm pointing it out to my buddy, and all of a sudden, I got the sense, and it was this weird sensation. It was like this, like you felt this, like almost like connection, and I knew that they knew that I could see them, right? And all this, and I got the sense that they knew because all of a sudden, I got the sense that they were like, "Oh crap!" and they were like trying to scramble, and they were literally trying to dim the light so that we would try to like lose it, but I still could see it. I basically was following it up, but this thing was cooking, man. I mean, it was going faster than any plane, any drone, anything. Like it was definitely not a question that it was definitely a UAP of some kind. But so yeah, it was interestingly enough, actually, Ronnie LeBlanc in his book, he talks about an experience of seeing a UFO down in Massachusetts. That had a similar configuration, although it was bigger than what we saw. But
where in Massachusetts?
Leominster area, I think, is where he saw it. But he looked up, and he basically was the ship that it was large. It was like a triangle, but it had lights that were shaped like crosses. And like the way he described it was very similar to like, I think I might have seen like a smaller version or something. But yeah, it was interesting. It was very interesting for that sighting and the connection that you feel with it. But so yeah, that was another crazy experience I had.
Speaking of which, so I don't know why, like I want to ask this, so I don't know if you have a good answer for this or not, so we'll see. So anyway, when you were first talking about that old story where you thought you were seeing Santa Claus or whatever, and with the light, and then now with this story, since you just mentioned you almost felt like a connection. For some reason, do you feel like that could have been the same light that you saw from back in the day?
Well, that's a good question. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, to be honest with you. I mean, there are stories of like, especially abductees or contactees where like the beings follow them, and things like that through their life. I have a couple of memories from when I was a kid that make me question if I might have had some abduction experiences. I've never explored it. I've never done like hypnosis. Or anything, but I, from stories that I've read and then remembering what I remember, I think I might have had some experiences firsthand, but I'd like to explore it more. I just never have had the opportunity to. So, but yeah, that's a good question. To be honest with you, I don't know. What I do know is that these beings seemed, or at least from my perspective, they seem to have good intentions, or at least in terms of like the whole experience with that led me on my spiritual path, and then eventually led me to where I am now with practicing Zen and things like that. So if anything, I'm grateful, to them and the experience. And I don't know if I would have ended up where I ended up without that. You know what I mean? That's the thing, and that's kind of what going back to Jacques Vallée, that was his point. People have these paranormal experiences, and it changes their lives. It changes the course of their lives. It changes the course of human history. It changes the course. It affects us. You know what I mean? So what exactly are we dealing with? You know what I mean? Who's at the helm? Who's got the wheel? You know what I mean? So that's what I think is the biggest question about this mystery. Like, yeah, the government's admitted UFOs are real. Okay, great. I think we all pretty much kind of knew that. But now the real question is who is it? Why are they here? What are they doing? What's the intention? Are we working with them? But things like that. So, and the implications for what it means for humanity in the future. And I mean, it's going to be interesting. That's all I can say. It's definitely going to be interesting coming up. But with all these hearings that have been going on too, and I don't know if a lot of people have been paying a lot of attention to that, but it's big. Definitely keep your eyes on the skies because there's a lot more happening than we know or we see sometimes.
Than what we're being led to know, yeah, or something like that. Yeah, yep. I mean, I'm listening to this podcast where, I don't know if you heard anything about this yet, but supposedly when it was that day when Trump was doing that speech and he almost got it was an attempted assassination thing, but people were trying to say like when people were taking their videos and slowing them down, it was almost like there was UFOs in that and going around that area at the time. And I know some of the questions that were being asked, and the host of that podcast that I was listening to was even saying the same thing. Like some of the questions that they were saying about these videos is, well, would it have been the gunshot? But the answer that he says is no, because you can clearly hear when the gunshot went off, and these were being seen right before, minutes before, the first shot even got shot off. So I don't know if you even heard anything of that. I mean, I guess real quick, Jason, before we wrap this up, is like a couple things. So you probably heard about the quote alien bodies that's going on around from New Mexico that they have. And then, and I guess what I want to pick your brain for a couple things is I want to go back to Milton, since you were around that area and when you met Jeff and stuff.
Yep.
Did you and him talk about that place around Milton? Oh man, I wish I could remember exactly where, but there was like a mountain or something that.
Yeah, no, we did. I can't remember the name of the mountain myself either, too. Now, it's funny you say that because I was actually thinking about that earlier as I was talking about that. But, yeah, there's a mountain out in the Milton area. I think I don't know if it's in Milton.
It was around that area, I think.
It's like the next town over or something like that. But, yeah, that's known to be, it's thought to be a vortex. Like above the mountain is thought to be a vortex. Where ships come through and things like that. There's been strange lights and activity that happens there. But yeah, Jeff was really big on that area. So kind of in a twist with that, not too far away from Milton, I was on a private case. And now they talk about how a lot of the times like Bigfoot and UFOs are often seen together. And I was on a private case actually for a haunting. And I got a call from the client about a week after I did the interview with them. I was the case manager for the team at the time. And I got a call that there was a strange tracks in the woods out back of the house. I didn't really think anything of it. I'm thinking like, yeah, it's probably bear tracks, whatever. You know what I mean? So, it took me a few days to get out there, but I got out there and I still have pictures from it. Large footprints. It looked like large bear footprints. Like not a bear, like bare feet, bear footprints. So I'm like, at the time I wasn't really, I don't want to say like into Bigfoot. Like I'd read about Bigfoot, but I wasn't like studied up on it. I didn't really know how to investigate it and all that. But Jeff he was really into it and knew how to do all that stuff. So I called Jeff and I was like, Jeff, you got to come out here and check this out, man. And I was excited, you know what I mean? Because like, this is cool, you know what I mean? So he comes out, we started exploring the woods around the area, and we started finding tree structures. I found more footprints. I went over this like ridge down into this little gully, and there was like a little creek. And along the creek, there was a bunch of mud, and there was I don't even know how many footprints. There was tons. It was going all the way up the creek bed. But the weird thing, I never saw a Bigfoot, but I know it was there. And the reason why I know it was there, so there's two different camps when it comes to Bigfoot. So there's people that believe that Bigfoot is a relic hominid, that it's like a long lost cousin of humanity, or an ape of some kind, right?
Our lost cousin, or whatever you want to call it, yeah.
But a physical, right? But a physical creature. Then there's another camp that believes that Bigfoot is possibly more like UFOs, like a multi-dimensional type being, and can be physical or non-physical. So I fall in the latter camp. So I believe that Bigfoot, because of my own experiences and what I've experienced myself, I believe that Bigfoot is multidimensional and can shift in and out of our dimension or reality, or possibly cloak. Not quite sure, or both. But anyway, reason why I say that. So I was on this case. I was back in the woods. I was by myself. I was video recording. Wish I still had the video. It's on an old computer, long gone. But this video, I'm recording, and I kind of everything went quiet. Like my UFO experience or the beam of light experience, everything in the woods went really quiet, and I knew something weird was going on. So I was like, maybe it's time to get out of here. So I started walking out of the area I was in, and I had footsteps come running up behind me, like as fast, like if you picture like somebody running at full speed. I whipped around, and there's nothing there. So, okay. So I come out of that area. There was this big area that had this like big tree that looked like it had been almost like pulled down. You know what I mean? Like, because the snap of the tree, it wasn't like uprooted, hadn't fallen over from wind or whatever. It was like snapped about like a third of the way up on the tree.
So pretty much like a really high for like even a human couldn't have done it.
Yeah, this tree was big too. I mean, it was a big tree. But it was odd. I was checking it out, just trying to see if it happened naturally, if it was, whatever. So I'm checking out this tree, and I'm kind of narrating as I go along. And I'm on one side of the stump, and it's a big tree. I can't get over. You'd have to kind of climb up it and jump off it, that type of thing. So it's across the path, and I'm standing on one side of it, and like in a quiet moment, I'm just kind of filming around. All of a sudden, right on the other side of the tree, there was this huge stomp. And it was either like something jumping out of the tree or something angry and stomping as hard as it could. But it shook the ground. I mean, literally, I felt it. And I did the Wile E. Coyote thing. I jumped up in the air and my legs were going, like the fight or flight thing, right? And I took off. I just, boom. Not even, like my brain wasn't even working. I just, boom, I was gone. I mean, this thing sounded massive, whatever this was. It's just massive. And so I come flying out of the woods. I'm white as a ghost. And Jeff sees me and he goes, "Dude, are you okay?" And I'm like, no. Right, so I go back on the video, and I had actually caught the stomp on the video. So I played it for them. And they heard it, and they were like, "Holy crap." And I'm like, "Yeah, dude." I'm like, "That's what I'm talking about." Like I couldn't even see anything. There was nothing there. So we come to the investigation night, right? And not only did I see an apparition on this investigation, okay, so I saw literally a woman apparition start to form in front of me and another investigator, but we were back in the woods, and it was nighttime, so we had hung these flashlights, and they looked like glow sticks. Like you turned them on, and they looked like glow sticks. So we were hanging them in trees along the path, so we would kind of find our way out. And as we were in the woods, we decided, okay, yeah, we're investigating. We were having some weird stuff happen, but we start to leave, and we go, "Where's the flashlights?" Something had gone through, and we'd hung them high. You know what I mean? Something had come through and turned off one flashlight. The next flashlight over, it turned off. The next flashlight, they had tried to, but they had actually set it to like the strobing one. So it was like flashing. And then they had turned off the third one. So whatever this thing was literally trying to like make us get lost. So it was interesting. That was an interesting investigation. But anyway, sorry, I digress. But that was in proximity to, or not too far away from this mountain that has a lot of activity and vortexes and all that stuff. So, yeah, it's a strange area. of Vermont. I'm going to say so. If you live in that area, if you investigate in that area, buckle up because it's interesting.
It's a wild ride, that's for sure. The last thing I'll say that I talked with Jeff too, because I actually heard it from Jeff originally, is he was sharing that we all know Lake Champlain with with Champ and stuff, but he was also mentioning like Jeff believed it was possibly a home base for what's that phrase? Submergent unidentified object or something like that.
Yeah, USOs. Yeah, unidentified submerged objects.
Yeah,
that's interesting. A lot of the strange stuff, a lot of paranormal activity, including UFOs, and a lot of it centers around bodies of water for some reason. And I don't know if there's something in connection with like the electromagnetic, the conductivity of water, or if it's something with the reflectiveness of water. And so, like, one of the things I've noticed in the paranormal is like mirrors and things like that. When you have two mirrors that face each other, right, it creates that infinite doorway.
Oh yeah,
right?
Yeah,
and creates a doorway for pretty much anything to come through. Well, water is a reflective surface, right? What if there's something to that? What if there's something with like a mirror universe? You know what I mean? That type of thing. Anyway, it gets out there in my brain.
I get what you're saying, because it's almost like I've been reading about the Alaska Triangle, where they say like the water there is home to like a U.S. government base, where that's where they do some of the back engineered stuff because of the underwater pyramid or something like that.
Yeah, the Black Pyramid. I've heard about that. Yeah.
So no. I mean, I agree with you. Like, I mean, what's about it? Because I think what were they trying to say too? Was something about like these pyramids help create their own like energy. So basically, that's how like I'm just going by what I've heard. This isn't my own opinion or anything. I'm just going by what I've read, listened to. But they say like these pyramids, and I guess there's 3, maybe more, but from what this is what I'm recalling. There's like 3 specific ones, and this one is definitely one of the top ones, the Black Pyramid in Alaska. But they say like the reason why some of these UFOs that can go in and out of being seen, or cloaked, I should say, is because they're getting charged by these pyramids. Yeah. So, I mean, it could very well be the fact that it's like that old science experiment. What is it? Is it the water with the egg or something that create the light, the electricity or something like that? Anyway, that's what it kind of reminds me of. It's like that old science experiment with the water. But then again, if you look at it, water is a source of energy anyway.
Right.
And so, I mean, that really is a good way of saying, well, I mean, if you're looking for a big, ultimate, unlimited battery, water and whatever else would be the perfect combination.
Yeah, no, that's true. Well, there's also, you hear the stories too about so off the coast of California, there's kind of like a shelf out there, and there's kind of a formation on that shelf where a lot of people feel there actually might even be possibly another base down there, like an extraterrestrial base. There's also, you hear about the dark side of the moon. You hear about the moon's hollow. It's a base. All that stuff. I guess supposedly the moon rung like a bell one of the times or something like that, right? When we went to the moon or something, but. We've explored so little of our oceans and our bodies of water that I would not be surprised. You know what I mean? It's the perfect place for them to hide if they want to have a base here. So, I honestly, I'm a believer. Actually, it reminds me of the one time, one of the things I saw in Vermont, actually, of a UFO real quick. So in Winooski, it was actually landed. It was on the ground. And I'm telling you, so it was out towards where we lived. You could kind of look out towards like Colchester in that area and towards that direction. And I forget the name of the route, but out in that area, there's kind of like, it was kind of open. There was kind of like a swampy area, that type of thing. But that's basically where this thing looked like it came from. But it was like it was an orange orb type UFO. And I remember seeing it. It lifted up. It was going vertically first off the ground, and then it started going across the sky. And as it did that, it started accelerating. And again, I got this like that connection feeling, and I got the feeling that it knew I was seeing it, so it started going faster. And then as it started going faster, it started to fade, and it actually like blinked out. Like it, I basically think it shifted dimension or shifted out of our reality or whatever. Basically, but my ex-wife at the time, we both watched it the whole time, go across the sky and then just disappear. So they definitely. That's the thing is like I don't know what the connection is with water. With there definitely seems to be something though, and then not just UFOs. You've got you look at all the missing 411 stuff that's come out. A lot of that's
happened on water. Yep,
bodies of water. You hear about hauntings, haunted lakes. We have one here in New Hampshire. There's a lake. I think it's literally called Haunted Lake, where the story was people have heard like screams, like a woman being murdered or something. You know what I mean? And there was a story of or screams of somebody being murdered or something. But there was a story of a guy who got murdered out there by his partner. They were trying to build something, do something together business wise, and he murdered him out there. But they're always there's something with bodies of water, that's for sure. You know what I mean? Definitely more research needed though.
A lot more research, and then it's like you and I were kind of talking like even beforehand and stuff. We're always talking about like, God, there's not enough hours in the day to do everything we want to do.
Oh yeah. Oh, I hear you. Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, Jason, I don't want to take any more of your time. I mean, I do appreciate your time nonetheless, and I hope everybody that has listened to this enjoyed your stories and stuff. And I would like to have you back on because I feel like when you were talking about your story about that experience that you had kind of made you want to help people. I feel like that would be a good topic to touch on, is like possibly like when people, because a lot of people have contacted me sometimes and they're just like, hey, like there's something going on here, how do I feel, like how do I deal with my protecting my area and stuff. And I feel like that would be a great conversation, because sometimes like I suggest like like red brick dust and like salt and stuff like that. So maybe like when we can find a time, maybe we can like kind of do a little episode about that or something, of like try to help how to help people or tell people like, look, this is a way of like, if you feel like you want to keep entities out or something, or energy I don't even know how to even talk like go about that in the right correct way, but yeah, I feel like that's a good way.
Yeah, no, that would be a good. Well, actually, one of the things I would recommend to do. I mean, I'm happy to do it too, but one of the members in our group, we have a few members actually that are kind of mediums and things like that, and they have a little bit more on the spiritual side of things in terms of what they deal with our group. So our group, we do both the spiritual and the scientific of the paranormal. So we do use mediums, but we use it in conjunction with the science. So we will have a medium do a reading on a case. They don't reveal the information to the team until about halfway through the night, so that we can kind of try to correlate things and verify and validate and all that stuff.
Yeah, it's like what you find matches what they sent or whatever. However you want to look at that, yeah.
And then also we can use the information on the back half of the night to try to communicate more as well too.
Right.
So we kind of do it like both ways, but the reason why I bring it up is because they're pretty familiar with like the spiritual side in terms of like techniques and things like that. Now, granted, it's never a guarantee and things like that, but I would definitely recommend to talk with them a little bit about that type of stuff as well, because they'll have some good insights into that. Things you can do. I know, just to, briefly, it's definitely a very personal thing. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's for like personal beliefs and spirituality and things like that. But there's definitely a lot of different things you can do. So, but yeah, we'll talk about it sometime. Absolutely.
Yeah, and for anybody listening, if you guys have like any questions for Jason or something for maybe the next time Jason comes on, maybe we can pick his brain a little bit more. But on that note, Jason, again, thank you for your time, and
Yeah, thanks for having me.
yeah, and we'll get together again, and yeah, maybe next year we can do a little bit more, and hopefully get a little bit more evidence, so we can like not all. I don't even know where I'm going with this again. Where we'd all enjoy it, but also at the same time, we're not all cuckoo at the same time. So,
Yeah, no, I hear you. Well, that's what happens when you get past 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. Things get a
oh
little.
God, yeah. Well, that especially with the dinner bell, man. That exploded, which everybody can hear about that a little bit too. Cause yeah,
Yep.
that was crazy. But yeah, so everybody else that you made it this far, you deserve a cookie and a pat on the back. And like I always say, is keep your eyes open, because you just never know it's an apparition, or in this case, keep your eyes to the sky, because you never know if you might see UFO or UAP.